Hello everyone, welcome to the Ocean Sound Storytelling channel. I am the storyteller, and today I am so happy to be with you. You may be curled up under a blanket or listening with your ears on a soft pillow. Wherever you are, whatever the time, thank you for being here. Before we begin with an interesting story, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, so I know you enjoy relaxing moments like this. Where are you from? Send me a little hello in the comments. I would love to know which corner of the world you are listening from. Now, relax your body. Close your eyes and let the gentle waves take you into a gentle story, a little strange, a little mysterious, but warm enough to lull you to sleep all night long. So, are you ready? Tonight's story begins. How to go back. 2 years ago, I stared into the eyes of a little dead girl. She was sprawled on some highway, deep in what used to be the Midwest, her dead, fermenting eyes staring past me, and up, up into the sun-bleached sky. They didn't leave many bodies behind when they left, didn't want to find skeletons when they came back, I assume. Her skin was dark and leathery. There was a hole growing in her cheek. Blue tendrils came twirling out of the rotted, bony mass with those little orange tips. I wished they were green. I missed the trees, the grass. The closest thing to nature are the dead bodies with the synthetic viruses, eating themselves towards the clouds. Puny fingernail scratches on deep blue skin. She might have been dead for 3 months, 6 at a stretch. The first thing I felt when I saw her was excitement. She was the closest thing I'd seen to another person in 6 years. My father's body had been more pristine, less infected by the now, a perfect conservation of the then. There was only the tight, red little hole in his temple, the pool of dark, sticky blood pooling around bits of his brain, staring at me like a sick, foaming, red-furred dog. His eyes were stained red by blood, and they sat uncomfortably in their sockets, dislodged by the force of a bullet tearing it all up behind them. He was smiling, a slash of red teeth, red eyes popping. I half expected them to flick towards me, half expected the revolver, still lying loosely in his palm, to fire a matching shot through my own temple. I was relieved when he killed himself, as I was when I saw the dark hole in that little girl's cheek. I took the gun, I took his shoes, I turned around, and I left. As I reached the crest of the yellow hill, I looked back at him, lying like roadkill on the highway, in the dead yellow grass, our truck lying upside down, smoking, a few feet away. I wiped blood from my forehead, and I pressed on, the sun belching like a toad-white bubble of heat that burst around me periodically. There was a similar gunshot in the little girl's calf that poked out from her purple nightgown. It was the nightgown that made me vomit. I heaved onto the tarmac. I heaved and I heaved. She was so young, the same age as me probably, when I left my father's corpse to rot in the fat white sun that turned the sky gray from its heat. It happened in the night, I thought, sitting on the tarmac, staring at the little dead girl. There were faint, sun-baked faint tire marks on the road. She had gone, I thought, so young. She died, seething with red-hot pain, alone in the inky night, not an inkling of who she once might have been. The sun was rising, the sky was losing her blue. The pile of vomit to my side would begin to cook soon, like a stinking goose egg in a frying pan. I stood up. I looked at her once more, a china doll, cracked up and fading in the sun. I turned my head back to the road, the tarmac melting into a black puddle on the horizon. It had been the last wink of winter that day. Or what would have been winter? My diary says so. March 3rd. It's almost definitely wrong. The last time I was really sure of the day, the month, the year, I was 9. The day the school caught fire and burned down. The village burned for a week. The school was first, a black plume into the purpley gray midday sky. The grass was already threadbare, yellow. The buildings were lazy, wooden shacks, standing crooked, haphazard, peeling rows like a pile of matches. It's difficult to build, gather materials, do anything at all when you swelter all day under a rock or in a shack waiting for the midnight hours. The village burned, and then Grandma picked up bleach on the exodus, and soon everybody was gone, my father on his way. That day, after seeing the dead girl, I had collected enough gas and food to wait out the summer in the caves. They were damp, dripping places if you went down far enough. It stank of rotted bodies, those who had starved or gone, but it was cool. It was dark. It was safer than third-degree burns and snarling tumors all summer long. I remember I'd left it so late that I knew to stop driving and lie in the grass under the car. I usually passed out from the heat after an hour or so. Then the sun was lower in the sky, orange and red, the sky green and pink. I poured water over myself, guzzled it through my cracked, bleeding lips. And then I drove, and I drove. I'd left it so late, so dangerously late, that towards the end of the journey they started appearing in the sky. Small black dots at first, but they got bigger. They're ships, full of, I don't know, probably scientists in gray coats, watching, waiting for everything to die so they could start again. They're nothing but black pebbles in the sunset to me, and they disappear in the safety of the night. Black pebbles, no windows, no movement, no noise. They've no exhaust fumes, no visible sign of life. They just float calmly in the sky, black beads, watching as Earth eats itself like a coyote starving in the desert, picking at its own ribcage for morsels of its fleshy stomach. A stomach long gone. That little dead girl was a premonition, I suppose. It had been a silent, dissociative half-decade of white, silent heat. Each year dripped onto my lips like the last of the water in the hip flask I dangle now, as I speak, above my head. I should have been gone for the caves days ago. I stand on the roof of a gas station. It's midday. The sky is clear and gray. The yellow-brown plains sprawl outwards, forever on all sides. The highway cuts a black line down the middle. There's the occasional Lone Ranger, a telephone post in the distance, the hollow carcass of a tree. It's silent. So silent. Silence as deafening as a Red Sea, crashing down on my shoulders and burrowing into my dry, blistered throat. There's blood leaking from the blisters in my cheeks. It starts to boil slowly, etching teary burns down my chin, down my neck. I don't feel it. I don't feel anything. I'm a pair of eyes. I forgot the cave long ago. I've been waiting for this day. The last day of winter, the last wink. I hold my arms outstretched. From somewhere far away, much bluer and greener, much louder. If I squint, I can feel them burn like an old photograph on the campfire. The sensation starts to feel like rain, cold and relieving. I bleached myself intentionally. I went to one of the rotted bodies deep in the caves. A man. In the torchlight, his eyes were milky and half-closed, his mouth slack. There was a bottle of something that had rolled away from his right hand. There were foamy remnants on his lips. He reminded me of my little brother, Jeffrey. Maybe if he had grown up in the green and blue world, then he would have looked like that. I kissed his forehead. I began to forget not long after. It was sweet. It was like falling slowly asleep, from this nightmare. This fucking nightmare, I hear myself scream from far away, in the blue and green. I start to turn away now, as my legs begin to give out on the roof of the gas station. I can feel nothing holding out his hand. The blistered now is a universe away. Just before I turn and walk down the hill, the rain pouring onto my neck, blurring my vision into a sweet, comfortable gray, expansive, eternal gray. I see that little dead girl lying on the highway, sprawled out on the scorched earth. I smile as I slip away. I smile at her red, unblinking eyes. Guilty party. 2.5 hours after touching down in Innsbruck and boarding the SUV that waited to greet her, Amelia Carver's overnight expedition came to an end at a squat, crumbling structure in the rugged terrain of Samanatol Valley, from Dublin to Austria to Liechtenstein, from 12 a.m. to 6, from civilization to desolation, and she still didn't know if it was worth it. Looking at the building, little more than an abandoned mound of concrete, it was difficult to see how it could be. She hadn't accomplished anything of note since last year. She wasn't expecting to receive any awards. There were no contemporaries she still wanted to meet, and even if, by some chance, she was to be acknowledged for her endeavors, she had no desire to receive a tacky statue. Not that it mattered. She was contracted to be here, so she was. At least this year promised to be different, since Bertram was introducing something new, and she'd made her own assumptions about what that meant. A special guest, an unexpected attendee, one that would be worth turning up for, if it was him. "So now, you're not gonna throw me a bone?" she asked the driver, as he stopped by the secret military installation, which has been constructed by Nazi forces during World War II. Not so much as a nod or shake of the head, the driver, mannequin-like in black suit and mirrored sunglasses, said precisely as many words as he'd said since collecting her at the airport. A sum total of 0. "Cool," said his fare, adjusting the Venetian half-mask that covered the left of her face before popping the passenger door, the fabric of her crimson gown rustling as she got out. "Good talk. Thanks for the riveting repartee." Out of the vehicle, in the pale morning light, Amelia shut the door and straightened her skirt. Gravel spat like an angry rattlesnake as the driver stomped the gas and crunched away. "Rude," said Amelia, tottering on heels towards the entrance, a rusted steel door partially concealed by tangled vines. Exactly the kind of place she wanted to spend the first evening of the last month of the year, when she could be curled up watching TV, but here she was, pushing through a squealing slab of history to meet another expressionless brute, who was as conversational as the one who'd dropped her off. "Hey," she said, as the passage she'd entered closed around her. "Am I last again? I'm always late." "Shucks." The grunt showed no emotion while placing a barcode scanner type device against the scar on her neck, allowing a beep to confirm her identity. While he did this, She removed her phone from her clutch and tapped on it to display the invite she'd received, which was also scanned and accepted. Once done, the guard stepped aside, allowing her access to a drape-covered door. "Thanks," Amelia said, maintaining eye contact with the goon while adjusting her breasts. "So, is it true? Is it abyss?" No response. The bouncer flicked his eyes back to the wall. Amelia sighed and pulled the drape aside, stepping into a better lit chamber that she lost sight of immediately when a pair of calloused hands fell over her eyes. "Guess who?" came a gravelly voice, laced with playful menace. Amelia peeled the hands away and turned to face their owner. A beast of a man wearing jeans, a white cotton waistcoat, and a wolf's head mask. Blue eyes stared from its sockets, his lips curled up within its maw. Wolfclaw, always a pleasure. Of all the associates she'd met since joining the network, Wolfclaw was the one she liked most. He had a sense of humor to go with his violent nature and was capable of faking social niceties. "Carver," he greeted. "Thought it was you I heard coming in behind me, looking pasty as ever. Still not getting any sun? Still got the same machete?" Amelia asked, peering over his shoulder at the curved weapon strapped to his back. "Thought it might have broke from overuse. Heard it's taken 30 heads this year. Not jealous. Old Betsy's stronger than she looks." The masked man grinned. "What about you? I remember you saying last year how your kill count was too low. Any success ramping things up?" "In Ireland, not as much as I'd like," she said, rolling her visible eye, the taped-up hole of her masquerade mask concealing the empty socket of the other. "Came in with a solid 13, 3 more than last year, but shy of the 20 I wanted. An improvement is an improvement, and you are a more discerning kind of killer. Targeting assholes who mock the less fortunate and lack empathy is a task in and of itself. Unless you're starting to feel less philanthropic." "Nope." Amelia shook her head, turning away from the wolf-headed killer. "If I'm compelled to get my hands dirty, may as well clean some shit up. Anyway, never mind that. We better grab seats if there's any left. Bertram starts on time, and we're late." The interior of the chamber had been prepared for Bertram's event. Rows of chairs arranged before a makeshift stage holding a podium. Spotlights casting shadows on red curtained walls. The seats were occupied by figures in various states, some in their work clothes, boiler suits, leather aprons, lab coats, military fatigues. Others in more casual attire, some sporting face coverings, canvas bags, chrome constructions, cliched hockey masks, or things that had been assembled from strips of flesh. Some displaying faces not even mothers could love, but all unmistakably killers. "Indeed," said Wolfclaw, following Amelia towards the front, where she'd spotted a pair of vacant seats. "Wouldn't do to be kicked out," When I'm in with a chance of best massacre, you deserve an award for that. Amelia nodded. Speaking of awards, I guess you heard about the new one? Wolfclaw said, turning into the front row behind her. Lifetime Achievement Award. Arguably long overdue for a ceremony that honors psycho killers. Half-fuckers are near immortal. The question is, who's the inaugural recipient? Amelia finished, nodding at the motley crew of weird and wonderful murderers she passed as she made her way to a seat. You know what they've been saying on Instagram? Well, it's got to be Abyss, Wolfclaw said, taking a seat alongside her. How many times did he win Killer of the Year? 12? Does anyone have a better record? Not only that. Best dismemberment. Most depraved violation. Goriest cut. You name it. He got it. Every year for a decade. Until he vanished. He's the GOAT. Would be an insult to give it to anyone else. The question is he alive? All the rumors that circulate about him being locked away by the government, retiring to live as a lumberjack, being turned into mints by a final girl? Fuck, Wolfclaw gasped as she organized her dress on her chair. I know, the ultimate humiliation for serial slashers. Not that, Wolfclaw interrupted, touching her arm. That, Amelia followed his gaze to the left of the stage, where 3 men stood partially obscured behind curtains. 2 of Bertram's goons, and him, clad in an oil-stained pair of overalls, feet stuffed into boots that were coming apart, head concealed by a latex S&M hood, replete with zips, straps, and buckles. The 7-foot-tall hulking form was unmistakably Abyss. The shifting, awkward posture, the way his arms flexed, the movement of his head, glitching like stop-motion animation. She'd only seen videos, but she knew it was him. Wolfclaw was squinting behind his mask as he studied the granddaddy of killers. He's bulkier than I expected, taller. But look how they're restraining him. Is that a neck manacle connected to prods? Amelia had noticed this too. But before she could consider it, the lights dimmed and the piped music came to a halt. A hush fell over the crowd, and all eyes went to the stage as the curtain on the right was thrown back, allowing a bearded man in a suit to stride out, beckoning applause, which he got in buckets from all, because this was their benefactor, Bertram Belasco, long-serving head of the serial killer network. Amelia took part in the adulation as he soaked it up. In the 5 years since he found her and signed her up to his club, she'd come to respect him like everyone else. Being selected was nothing short of an honor. It meant her killer credentials were on point. It meant, despite the exorbitant subscription fee Bertram charged for membership, that she had access to all SK network resources: anonymity, medical aid, protection, and sanctuary when required. Luckily, She hadn't needed to avail of much yet, being a small fish in the pond. A little treatment for wounds, some hacking to remove her image from CCTV footage. All in a day's work for the network. "Welcome, friends," Bertram said when the applause died down. "Delighted to see you all again. Our venue is a little less luxurious than usual, but there's a reason for that. One that will become clear soon. Before we start, I want to take a moment to say that this year's nominees for our various awards were highly impressive. Kill of the Year, Sickest Mutilation, Most Creative Execution. You've outdone yourselves, and I want to congratulate everyone for their efforts. You've made me proud, and, well, just well done." "Weird start," Wolfclaw whispered, and Amelia nodded. Bertram seemed more somber than usual. "However," he blurted then, perking up as his eyes went to Abyss. "Before we get to that," a surprise, a murmur rippled through the crowd, and Amelia felt goosebumps on her arms. "As you know from my invite," their host went on, "we have a special award tonight. And along with it comes a special guest. There's been a lot of speculation online as to who it might be, with one particular name being mooted more than others. Well, I don't want to keep you or him waiting any longer, so let's kick things off with our first ever Lifetime Achievement Award. Won't you join me, please, in welcoming Abyss?" Applause filled the room as Abyss was guided out by the goons. His footsteps as he stomped to the podium were louder than the chants and cheers around her. But why was he secured like that? Was he here against his will? Was he a danger to his own kind? "I know this looks weird," said Bertram, as Abyss was brought to a halt alongside him, quivering as though volts flowed into his neck. But sadly, dear Abyss is not the force of nature he used to be. He's had to keep a low profile these last 10 years. 2 decades as the world's most prolific serial killer is something that can take a toll. He absorbed more pure guilt than anyone before him, and handled it like a trooper. But there's a limit to all things. And 10 years ago today, he reached his. He had to be put away for everyone's safety. Just one more kill would have broken him, released the guilt, and we weren't ready. "What's he talking about?" Wolfclaw hissed. Amelia shook her head. She had no idea. But whatever it was, it had the potential to be epic. As he spoke, Bertram retrieved an award from behind the podium. A grotesque creation made of twisted steel. "For you," he continued, presenting the award to the monster. "With gratitude. But this isn't your true reward. A polished lump of metal in your hands is nothing but a weapon. I know what you'd really like is closure." Abyss closed his fist around the award, gripping it like a bludgeon, while Bertram raised an arm and clicked his fingers. Amelia sat up in her chair, watching the curtains at the back of the stage part, and another suited mook wheel out a crate. "This is different," said Wolfclaw. "What's the old boy up to? Does everyone remember Diamond Lagoon, 1995? Abyss's most infamous rampage. He took out an entire settlement in one night. An incredible feat of savagery. 67 residents, 66 victims, because one slipped through the net. A plucky young girl. Don't you hate them? We've all been frustrated by one of those. For Abyss, though, in a 20-year reign of terror, she was the only one who ever got away. The only blemish in an otherwise spotless career. And guess what? Bertram moved to the edge of the stage as his man undid latches on the crate. "We have her here tonight." Gasps in the crowd as the guard opened the box and a disheveled woman fell out, barely getting her hands in front of her before hitting the floor. Her face was lined with age. Her hair was gray. She whimpered where she'd landed by Abyss, whose head was turned down as he watched. "No way," Amelia said, as Bertram and his goons walked off the stage. "Are we going to see a live kill?" "You're free, Abyss," Bertram called as he slipped through the curtains. "Let it go." The crowd had gotten to their feet, and Amelia joined them, all eyes on the scene, keen to see what would happen next. And what happened next was like watching a movie sped up. 2x, Abyss threw his head back and howled. The woman screamed up at his hood. Abyss drove the trophy into her skull. The onlookers in the crowd cheered and jumped. Amelia's mouth fell open. Wolfclaw whistled. Abyss turned to the crowd and started to shudder. Not from being electrocuted, from something else. What was it Bertram had said? Amelia wondered. One more kill would have broken him, released the guilt. The shuddering turned to convulsions, and Abyss roared. Not now in fury, but in pain. He staggered, his body shaking violently. His head jerked back, and with a sickening crack, it split open, ripping through latex and spilling blood and bone to the floor. 3x. Black mist poured from his mask. Smoky tendrils shot forth, snaking through the air and filling the room. Writhing, maleficent tentacles that multiplied and wriggled like worms before plunging into the heads of those below, squeezing screams from their lungs. Their bodies convulsed and their faces contorted as the guilt from Abyss took control. Amelia watched chaos unfold, beginning with Wolfclaw, who stared wide-eyed in horror from his mask as he took his machete, lifted it to his neck, and sliced through. Hot, scarlet liquid splattered her face as she looked away, her eye falling on the killers behind her, who were turning their weapons on themselves, tearing at flesh, gouging out eyes, ripping their own jaws off in a frenzy. 4x, tendrils of mist withdrew from falling bodies, returned to the hovering mass over Abyss's corpse. Amelia tottered, unsteady, on heels slipping in blood. The screams were abating. The crowd was diminishing. Not many remained on their feet. Not many continued to be overwhelmed by the guilt of their actions, encouraged by the fingers of mist that had entered their brains. All of their brains, even hers. And that's when she realized she too had been invaded. But she, alone, was still standing, with a tendril of smoke connecting her to the pulsating mass, which was slowly drifting towards her from the stage. Drifting, oozing, throbbing, shrinking as it flowed into her head, filling her mind with images of her victims, bullies, narcissists, sociopaths, bigots, gaslighters, abusers, jerks. Am I supposed to feel bad for killing them? Her inner voice queried. Am I supposed to break under the weight of massive guilt? And that's when someone hit. Pause. I knew it would be you. A voice behind her, Bertram's, said, and she turned, the last of the guilt devouring her soul. Thought we'd have more time to nurture your talent, but Abyss's willpower was waning. He was going to release it soon. One last murder or not. And it needed to happen in a controlled environment. It needed to feast after being locked away for so long. And it needed to choose a new host. What is it? Amelia asked, aware of fresh darkness inside her. A force as old as time, Bertram said, taking her hand. An insatiable force that needs to be fed. But keeping it fed is not easy. And keeping it restrained, even harder. You see what it does when it's not. But it takes a certain kind of person. Abyss was that person before. 30 years he held it, a record. But it fucked him up. He was a discerning killer too, once upon a time, an idealist. He focused his darkness, like you, till he was chosen. What have you done to me? I'm sorry, Bertram said, leading her away from the carnage. As its guardian, I have to oversee the transference. It's never easy, but it's necessary. I do it to keep the world safe, believe it or not. Safe from unstoppable evil. It picked you today because you could hold it. But it's going to change you over time. It will naturally make you more feral, less controlled. A rampaging beast, if I'm honest. But it will also make you a legend. The best of the best. With the guilty conscience fueling you, you'll be Killer of the Year for as long as you want. And the next Lifetime Achievement Award will be yours. Amelia's mind was racing. His words sounded insane, but she could feel it. A growing hunger that demanded to be sated. A hunger that would make her a queen. Then I suppose I have work to do, she said, her voice sharp, like the switchblade in her clutch. Bertram nodded. "And I've a new network to build. Welcome to your new life, Amelia Carver." "Glad to be here," she replied, accepting a kiss to her hand. "I look forward to carving a fresh abyss. You're my rock." The bride and groom danced their first dance together. The room dark, the spotlight on them. Imogen Carlson tried and failed to grit her teeth. God, nothing was simple these days. Not even the simple acts of jealousy and resentment. How cruel this dance was, to parade their beautiful normalcy for everyone to see. She glared. Her mother leaned over, but not too close. Gosh, no. And whispered into her ear, "Do try to smile, dear. You're positively green with envy. It is your cousin's wedding, after all. Couldn't you try to look happy for her? And do something about those straps, will you, dear? They're, slipping." She winced. Pun intended? But Imogen did as her mother requested. She was already on the fringes of society since her accident. She ought not to exacerbate things. Imogen sat upright straighter and forced a smile onto the thing the mirror insisted was her face. She then dug out the dress straps, which had started to dig into both shoulders. The married couple, hands clasped, faces inches apart, spun across the floor in sync. Now and then, they snuck a kiss, much to the delight of the onlookers, who cheered and whistled. The muscles beneath Imogen's eyes twitched. All she wanted was to stay at home and hide away in her room, behind the safety of closed curtains. Yes, lock herself away and await any news from the doctors and scientists. Of course, there was the possibility that they might never understand her issue or find a cure. Mom and Dad had said she couldn't isolate herself like a leper if that were the case. When she retorted that she was a leper, they'd only looked at her with wounded puppy dog eyes, and here they were, watching a couple do everyday things, like touching and kissing. She'd never experience these things again, unless she were okay with screams in response. The song wound to an end, and the crowd roared and applauded. The couple opened up the dance floor to friends and family, waving them over. The music changed from elegant to upbeat. Imogen's parents got up, hand in hand. Her father reached out for her, then stopped before he could hurt himself. "Would you like to?" he said, nodding towards the dancing mob. When he saw the slight shake of his wife's head, he answered himself, "No. I suppose you'd better not." Acidic bile stung the back of her throat. God, she wanted some cake. But she was afraid that people would watch her as she ate, horrified, but unable to look away. "Kill me now," she muttered under her breath. "Oh, if I did that, I wouldn't get to introduce you to Alan." Imogen jumped and yelped. It was Martin, the groom. He wore a tux and held a glass of white wine by the stem. He was smiling at her, a mischievous twinkle in his eyes, heart squelching in her chest. Imogen frowned. What was he here to do? Make fun of her? Pull a prank on her? She'd had enough of that from the local kids who posted jelly packets through their letterbox. She supposed Mum had told her sister, who told her daughter and her groom-to-be. Not that they wouldn't have been able to see that something was wrong with her as soon as she showed up. During their first dance, the only light sources were the DJ's spotlight and Imogen's skin. Who's Alan? Martin's smile widened. He was tipsy. An old school chum of mine. I thought you two would hit it off. Imogen's furrowed brow deepened. Martin had to be joking. And why on earth would anybody hit it off with someone like me? You can see me, right? Because you're looking positively radiant tonight, said Martin with a wink. Imogen stared at him. He faltered. Sorry, not funny. The corners of her lips twitched. She could see why her cousin liked this man. He was kind and genuine. It was a little funny, she conceded. He relaxed. Alan's a great guy, and he just arrived. He couldn't make it to the ceremony, otherwise you'd have definitely noticed him. There had to be a catch. Okay, well, what's wrong with him then? Martin nodded, as though he'd expected this. Alan had a little accident a few months back. He's been struggling with it. I thought the two of you might have a lot to talk about. Imogen winced. Man, she had a tongue of acid sometimes, like the rest of her. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... She shook her head. Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's meet the guy. Martin downed the last of his wine, set it on the table, and took a fresh glass from a passing waiter's tray. Great. Come, I'll introduce you to him. He's right over there. Now listen, he's a little sensitive about his looks, but... Martin stopped and looked at her, swaying. I don't think you'll judge him too harshly on that account. Imogen gasped when she saw him. Alan was sat alone in the far corner of the room, where the shadows swam, nursing a drink. He appeared to be a stone golem. Imogen, slurred Martin, gesturing back and forth. This is Alan I was telling you about. Alan, this is... Imogen stepped forward with a genuine smile for the first time in months. She cut Martin off. Imogen, she said, it's a pleasure to meet you, Alan. Alan groaned, eyes fixated on his drink, which the servers had served him in a metal beer stein. Yeah, sure it is. You've had your look at me now. I haven't finished having my look at you, Alan. Alan flinched, looked up, then gasped. Oh, he said. Oh, she answered. Martin laughed, his glass of wine half empty. All right, I'll pat myself on the back and leave you two to get to know each other. Have fun. She sat beside Alan, who could not take his eyes off her. She removed her polyester gloves, to reveal her transparent, gooey green skin. Car crash. 2 lorries, each carrying mutagenic agents, collided. Nobody was hurt, except for a certain Imogen Carlson. She was trapped in her Pinto when the chemicals combined to make something new. Now I can't touch organic materials without absorbing and dissolving them. Alan nodded. He'd ripped his suit where he'd tried to pull it on over his gravel surface. I was backpacking alone when I got the phone call that my mum had fallen down the stairs. I rushed home, taking a shortcut through the haunted mountains. I ignored all the warning signs telling me not to. I guess the mountains took it as an insult and cursed me to a life of cold stoniness. Mum's fine, by the way. Her heart ached for him. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. Must suck not being able to touch anyone. Doctors much help? She shook her head. Nope. They've no idea. Mine neither. They said they've never seen any rock like it, that it doesn't seem to be organic. She gaped at him. She looked from her green, gloopy hand to his rocky one. She looked at him, a question in her eyes. Alan took a minute to register the importance of what he'd said, eyes widening. And then he smiled and answered the question by taking her hand with his. He did not scream. There was no bubbling or sizzling. Imogen did not feel the strange sensation of eating via something other than her mouth. She'd experienced it before, and it wasn't pleasant. Wow, she said, unable to say more. Alan leaned closer. Would you like to dance, Imogen? She thought about it, then threw her anxieties to the wind. Yeah, yes, I would, Alan. On their way to the dance floor, Alan stepped on a man's foot, breaking it. Alan didn't notice the screams for an ambulance. She had his complete attention. On their way to the dance floor, Imogen brushed a woman's hair with her ungloved arm, eating the strands. She didn't notice the little shriek or the woman's death glare. He had her complete attention. Doctors have called it thingification, after the thing from Fantastic Four. My guys are calling mine lullabitis, like in The Blob. I see you've also spent a lot of time hiding away indoors, glued to the screen. I have too. Guess we're not so alone now, huh? She nodded. Question. The Blob. Original from 1958 or the 1988 remake? Alan pondered as they started to dance, a wide circle of empty dance floor opening up around them. The original's got its charms, but for me, the remake takes the cake. Blasphemy. I know. Imogen couldn't help but smile. Those were her thoughts exactly. She leaned forward and kissed him on his stony lips. When I first saw you, my legs turned to jelly. Alan, grinning after the initial shock of the kiss, pulled her close so they were dancing skin to skin. And when I saw you, it warmed my cold stone heart. Imogen sighed and rested her head against his chest. What a wonderful wedding. Death in the White Room. In the White Room, always clean and full of light. Death had made itself at home. It lingered like an unwelcome guest, curling up in the dark recesses behind doors, or lying in wait beneath the bed's shallow. Its ghastly form remained unseen, its wheezing breaths unheard. Yet its presence was unmistakable, marked by the foul stench that clung to the air. It was a scent of old blood mingled with lye, and human refuse tinged with a sharp, lemony undertone. Arthur abhorred the lemon smell most of all. It was a poor parody of the fruit, all the sour and none of the sweet. They try to hide the nature of this place. Fresh paint over rotting wood, he said, his gaze drifting to the one dying beside him. The stranger was no more than a shadow of someone he once knew. A poor artist's rendition of his sister. Her skin, once golden and kissed by the sun, had turned pallid, marred with patches of purple. Her hair, once a rich brown, full of life and curls, had withered away to a handful of brittle wisps. Arthur had long forgotten the exact shade of his sister's eyes. Were they brown like mine, or did they favor mother's green? He wondered, but could not recall. He could lean over this sleeping stranger's body, pry open an eye to see. But this was not his sister, as he would often lie to himself. Yet he was older now than when she first became sick. And this lie seemed harder to believe with each passing day. A nurse, the fat one with that little nose, spilled a bedpan in the corridor today, Arthur said, his voice low and bitter. Like flies drawn to shit, they swarmed over it to clean before I could see. But I did. Red. He clutched the cold hand of the stranger. White little flies. I want to pick the wings off them and watch them struggle. I want to... His words faltered as something arrested his speech. A subtle, almost imperceptible squeeze from the stranger's hand served to both soothe and silence him. The stranger was listening. Was it the cruelty I insinuated, or the profanity that stirred you for a moment? Stranger, Arthur said, a wicked little smile curving his lips, though his eyes remained wide and wanting. He watched her lids, hoping to see them open, to see her well again. Yet no such miracle could exist. Her eyelids remained heavy, puffy, and bruised. There is a bit of father in me, you know, he whispered. A nastiness. Arthur turned to his left, gazing out of the window at the dying day. A thick wall of cloud loomed just above the horizon. Its underbelly dyed a deep orange by the setting sun, while the tops blushed pink against the purple sky. A seagull had perched itself on the windowsill, its clueless yellow eyes peering in. Yet, to Arthur, those eyes seemed mocking. The bird seemed to taunt him in silence. I smell the air, fresh and clean, while you languish on your sister's slow death. With a sudden, powerful flap of its wings, the seagull took off. A small down feather drifted in, slipping through a crack in the window, landing softly by Arthur's feet. He bent down to pick it up, but even that slight disturbance of air sent it skittering away, disappearing into the shadows beneath the bed. It was dark under the bed, where the shadows coiled thick and heavy. Death slumbered there, a patient snake nestled in the tall grass, awaiting an unsuspecting foot to wander too close. Arthur felt the bite, the venom coursing through his veins, carried by the flow of his blood. Sleep claimed him soon after, and not a peaceful dream was had that night. The stranger sat perched on the window stool, fingers gently pawing at the glass, as if yearning to escape. Their white gown, soft and delicate, was adorned with 1,000 downy feathers. The moon outside shone as brightly as the midday sun, bathing the world in a clean, silver light. When the stranger turned to face Arthur, familiarity struck. His sister looked at him with knowing yellow eyes and a petulant pout on her full lips. "You should open the window," she said, her voice hollow. Arthur cleared his throat, his voice strained. "Your feathers are too small. They won't catch the wind. You would fall like a chick too eager to leave the nest." She offered a wan, knowing smile. "These aren't my wings, silly. My wings are there," she said, gesturing towards the darkness beneath the bed. Tucked away in the shadow, you try so hard to ignore. Despite the smell I know your nose catches, would you abandon me? Ride the clouds with death and mocking seabirds, while I remain tethered to the earth with Father. Bang, bang, the sound tore through the night, rattling the very bones of the world. The moon fled, hiding behind a curtain of dark clouds. The door at the far end of the room shuddered on its rusted hinges, each violent shake loosening it further. The wood was aged and sodden, swollen with damp that wept from the splintered cracks, leaking a slow, miserable drip. Bang! Again, the assault resumed. A fist of stone, a voice of thunder on the other side. The clouds had deepened to a menacing red, pouring rain and spitting lightning. Thunder rumbled across the land, shaking the earth and rattling the windows in their frames. "I cannot be your shelter any longer," she whispered, her voice frail and sickly. "I will breathe my last, and the storm will hunt you down. The rain, relentless as it has been to me through the years, will hammer at you with the same fury. See the shadow, and together we shall fly." "I am afraid," Arthur said. The stranger took Arthur's hand in hers as he drew near. "This is what a sister's hand is for," she said softly, "to hold and be free of fear." It was day, a bright blue day, with a sky unmarred by clouds, white or gray. The window stood wide open, allowing the fragrance of rain-kissed grass to drift in. Outside, far below, a throng of tiny white flies swarmed. Sacrifice. This is an adult story, with language and content which may offend those easily offended. I can remember the sparkles, sunshine on water, at the river, that warm day in late spring. I remember the droplets on her skin, and I remember her eyes, her huge, childlike eyes, deep brown and clear and innocent, still unaware of her beauty, a child. Her perfect sun-kissed legs. I couldn't keep my eyes off her. I thought, how long do I have? How long will it take her to finish her drink? Lips pouting round the rim. I didn't want it to end. A face like one of those perfect, golden ratio faces that artists paint. Every single freckle was perfect, but she was real and was so beautiful it could have made me cry. And when she dived into the river, swam, ran on the bank, I watched her and I wanted her. I have skills, talents. Everyone knows I can charm, manipulate, lead them where I want them to go. Call me a wolf, but all wolves aren't the same. There is one kind with an amenable disposition, tame and gentle, following the young girls in the streets into their homes. The young girls don't know that these gentle wolves, out of all the wolves, are the most dangerous. Yes, I have skills. I know these girls. They go for the bad boy, and I am the likeness of a devouring wolf, strong and mighty, with great, large eyes, which in the night sparkle like fire, and a wide mouth with most sharp and cruel teeth, a strong body. They want me. They want the dangerous man. All the girls are racing to be the first to bleed, first to kiss, first to touch, first to fuck. It's not that they especially want any of these things, but they are terrified of being different, of being left behind. Stay with the flock, keep in time. She, as much as the others, terrified of not being the perfect girl, the girl who speaks quietly and calmly, who is always kind and nice, never mean or bossy. She who wants to fit in, not lead or lag. So, yes, I could have had her, led her there, like any of the others. But this one was different. I had imagined her and I, something real. I could have shown her things, many beautiful things, and excitement too. It was a dream. I know it could never happen. Eventually I'd change, and it would all go bad. The moon or the season would call me, and I'd hurt her, knowing I didn't want to. It's too hard when it comes, not something you can fight. It just happens. They know that, the ones who choose the girl to wear the hood. In the end, they all know that in the end, the bloodlust prevails. Yes, I'd eat that heart, panting hot and raw. Eat that sweet, dainty morsel. I don't know why they had to send her, why they had to send this girl. Any girl would have been okay. Any young girl. Fresh, you know. They knew. I think they knew my feelings for her. They must have known when they chose her. When they gave her the robe and the hood. Chose her as the virgin. And they knew when they sent her out. They knew she had to die like the others. Like every year. Did that make it better? Stronger? They for sure didn't think of me. Why would they? None of them ever cared about me. Here we are on the path. Her rich cascade of auburn hair tumbling out from her hood. She's skipping, smiling, with that basket full of wine. Some bring cakes, bake things. But she knew her grandmother, and her grandmother, old hag, crept away. She knew what was coming. She left the door unlocked and sneaked into the forest, kept herself safe. That's not as she'll tell it, but that's how it was. Her name doesn't matter now. She is the blood, the offering. They've dressed her in the robe, the hood. She's on the path. Everyone knows where this ends. Everyone but her. They will speak of her by her robe. She had a name, Diani, sweet, soft Diani. Diani, always with a smile, and so generous it was close to foolish. Her name meant dear, fitting perhaps, now. Now she is just the girl in the red hood. If she wasn't here, now, sometime later, she would have taken my hand and drawn it onto her breast. And it would have been sweet. In that cottage, on that bed, and she'd love the soft skin of my penis on her lips, and she'd smile when I shuddered as I came inside her, like a child given a gift. But this afternoon isn't going to end like that. I hate them for that. I want to call a pack and hunt them all down. They should fear me now. Those cruel men choosing her, making me do this, the worst thing, the worst part of this nightmare. What is destroying what soul I have left is I know she will taste good, good as she looks. I have always loved the way she looks. Pale skin and that mass of dark hair tumbling out from her hood. those child eyes. Too big, really. Those dark brown eyes. A beautiful child face on a woman. I want to look into them and for her to see me. The real me, you know? Not just the teeth. How long has this gone on? Thousands of years. I have read. Yes, I do read. I am educated. I have read the Greek. Pausanias knew the how and why. Told the story in which, each year, a virgin girl was offered to a malevolent spirit, offered as a sacrifice. And this spirit, dressed in the skin of a wolf, raped and ate the girl. They will tell another story, one that ends well. The girl will be rescued. Wishful thinking. A better story for their guilt. A happy fairy tale. Keep out of the woods. Don't speak to strangers. No one will mention Diani. They will agree, without words, not to mention her. They won't admit they chose the story. They chose the girl. I will be the malevolent spirit. Everyone believes there's a malevolent spirit. What does that mean, malevolent? I don't hate her. I do what they want. I do it for them. Someone has to. Someone always has. 1,000 girls, 1,000 innocent young girls, 1,000 virgins. So their crops will grow. So their gods will smile. I don the skin, the rank smelling skin, and pull the fangs into my mouth. It will haunt me. Next year, and the years after, all I will see is her eyes. I will see my teeth in her eyes. Watch her last moments, her confusion, and the rising fear. Her scream as I take her. Remember her hair tumbling from her hood. Remember the soft, sweet taste on my lips. As we stroll through the woods, the flowers mock me. They cover the peaceful, sun-dappled glades. Bluebells crowding round the base of the trees, like flirting girls. Sweet-smelling columbine in the glades. The dog violet line her path. Bow as she walks to her sacrifice. Take your time, pick some flowers, I say. It's a lovely day. I know I'm going to do this. I know the flowers will cover the smell of your fear and your blood when I take you. Will help cover the stench when my teeth rip open your stomach. The gods will smile. They're bastard smiling gods. And the villagers, they all know it's happening. Duplicitous, lying, cruel bastards. They will cover it up again. They will tell their tales like they always do. But they know, they all know what big teeth I have and who I'm going to eat. Bernice. Theme parks are the best. The roller coasters rule. But I didn't want to go into the House of Horrors. It looked dark and creepy. And I knew it was full of dead things and madmen. like the pictures on my dad's scary videos. That kind of stuff made my insides squirm and threaten to erupt buckets of puke. But Bernice had the tickets and me by the hand, and she was dragging me along and wouldn't stop. What was I supposed to do? Sit down and cry? I'd look like a baby, and Bernice would laugh. It was the first time she'd talked to me, so I didn't want that. Instead, I let her lead me to that dirty, gray building with the gargoyle-covered, finger-like spires, which rose into the cloudless, midday sky like a giant, concrete hand waiting to grab us. My feet dragged. The ground felt like quicksand. But Bernice kept me out by moving fast, getting us to the looming mansion, safe and sound. I said nothing when she handed the tickets to the bored-looking teenager wearing a Raiders of the Lost Ark t-shirt who was manning the booth. I said nothing when he complained we were too young, but it was okay if we really weren't scared. I said nothing when Bernice told him our parents said it was fine and pulled me through the thick sheets of plastic that hung like strips of flesh in the open door. I could still feel Dad's hand on my shoulder, nudging me on like he had towards Bernice. It was like I was being carried by that same momentum as I stepped forward into the darkness. And then, there I was, in a haunted house in Pleasure Beach in Blackpool, holding hands with a girl from Northern Ireland. And I couldn't really believe this was me. Because if there was one thing I hated more than monsters, it was girls. Or at least, that's what I thought. Just a few minutes earlier, I'd been eating a burger at a white plastic picnic table on the veranda of the theme park family restaurant, sitting on a wobbly chair and slurping Coke while acting out a battle with my Star Wars toys. That's when I spotted the girl from our hotel, watching me from her seat a few tables away. It made me splutter Coke all over my Goonies t-shirt, because I hadn't expected to see anyone I knew here, so I hadn't been holding back on the sound effects. I tried not to go red as I looked away, sliding Vader and Luke into my lap. But I was glowing with embarrassment, so I failed. Like me, she was eating lunch with her family at one of the flimsy tables crammed into the packed restaurant courtyard. Like me, she was also trying to entertain herself while her parents babbled on about nothing, taking forever to finish eating and wasting precious attraction riding time. Except she was doing it in the less embarrassing way of juggling tennis balls. I knew her name was Bernice because that's what her sisters called her in the hotel lounge every evening, where I read Spider-Man comics and she juggled. She made those balls go so fast, it was hard not to sneak a glance. She never even dropped one, and mostly, she wasn't even paying attention to what she was doing. I tried not to care. I tried not to think she was cool, with her straw-colored hair tied up in pigtails, and those freckles on her nose that were kind of cute. But she kept catching me watching, which was annoying. It made her stupid. Older sisters giggle, whisper in her ear, and laugh. I knew they were talking about me. It made my cheeks tingle and burn, so I had to get up and leave the room. I always looked back as I did, and she was always staring after me. And now she'd seen me playing with my Star Wars toys. And for some reason, I felt really dumb. I didn't want to look at her again, with my red face and Coke-stained shirt. But my head wouldn't stop, and when it turned, I got a horrible surprise. Bernice wasn't at her table anymore. She was standing right there beside mine, a tennis ball clutched in each hand. "Hey, my ma'am gave me tickets for a ride. Are you coming?" "What? Are you coming on a ride with me? I'm bored." "Go on, Kev," my dad said, nudging me out of my seat and pushing me towards her. Luke and Vader fell from my knees and hit the flagstones. "You kids go ride the Chair O planes. We'll be finished when you get back, and we'll do another roller coaster." I didn't have time to retrieve my toys, and I didn't want to be seen doing it anyway. They were my favorite ones, and I didn't want to lose them. But suddenly, Bernice's eyes and smile seemed more important. She stuffed her tennis balls into the pockets of her jacket, then grabbed me by the hand, and we were off, weaving our way through the tables and crowds out of the restaurant. Her sisters staring after us, sticking their tongues out and making kissy noises with their lips. And that was that. Except Bernice didn't want to go on the Chair O planes. And now I was in what looked like the dirtiest of dungeons, with plastic skeletons jiggling on the walls, dim red bulbs barely illuminating the hall, and the sound of recorded screams filling the air. My heart pounded like it was trying to break free, my breath catching with each shadow that stretched from the walls. The darkness seemed to tug at my limbs, squeezing tighter with every screech. I didn't like the plastic vampire sucking on the neck of a mannequin. I didn't like the wax werewolf with its snout stuck in the entrails of a scarecrow. I didn't like the life-size, glowering Jack the Ripper, blocking our path with his blood-stained knife. It wasn't just that. The whole place stank of mothballs and mold, a damp smell that reminded me of Gran's house when we'd gone to clear it out after she died. That same scent of damp or death. I wasn't sure which had stuck with me after just an hour in her house a year before. And it was back now, stronger than ever. And the air didn't just smell bad. It felt bad, like a horrible weight pressing down on me, squeezing the oxygen from my lungs, like Vader using the Force to crush a throat. I hated it, every bit, but Bernice loved it all. She squealed in delight at every discovery. pulling me through the halls at breakneck speed, barely pausing at each horrific sight before barreling us on to the next one, which was good in a way, as I didn't want to be there longer than necessary, but bad in another way, because I'd barely recovered from one scare before another leapt out. Frankenstein's monster staring wide-eyed on a table, blood-chilling. A trio of witches at a smoking cauldron full of bones, nerve-wracking. A pack of rabid dogs with drooling teeth, terrifying. And let's not talk about the clown. I tried not to show I was afraid. I mimicked her shoulders bobbing and her arms swinging when she laughed and joked around and agreed the scary things were really cool. When she playfully pushed me towards the creature from the Black Lagoon, I made sure my intended yelp came out a giggle. When she said, grabbed my hand, and told me she was scared of Norman Bates, I bravely tightened my grip and said it was fine. I was glad it was dark, because that meant she couldn't see the expressions on my face, or how my eyes were squinting most of the time. I was gladder still when we rounded a final corner and saw the word exit. We were almost out. It had seemed like an age, but was probably only 5 minutes. Somehow, I'd made it without peeing my pants, and she had no reason to think I was a baby. With luck, she might even have forgotten Star Wars, and that's when it all went wrong. My ball, she gasped, releasing my hand to search in both her pockets. I lost one of my balls. Oh no, I replied, looking at the floor, hoping I'd find it. When did you lose it? I don't know, Bernice snapped, knocking me against the rickety wall as she pushed past. That's a stupid question. If I knew that it wouldn't be lost, I'm going to find it. She didn't wait for me to answer. Didn't wait at all. Just ran back into the corridor we'd come out of and disappeared. Bernice, I shouted, and my face tingled when I said her name aloud. Wait! She didn't. I stared at the corner she'd turned, hoping to hear her call back, listening for a trace of her, even her footsteps. But the wails from the speakers seemed to be getting louder and louder, seemed to be laughing at me now. I turned the other way and looked at the exit ahead, green letters glowing in the darkness, which seemed even darker now I was alone. For a second, I thought about running, getting out of there and waiting outside. For a second, maybe 2. But deep down, I knew I couldn't do that. I didn't want her to think I was a wimp. Being brave was somehow important now, but it wasn't the only reason I decided to follow her. I wanted to make sure she was okay. Dad would have been angry if I didn't. If I'd left her alone and something happened. I'd heard him say to Mom how he hated himself for not visiting Gran more often, for not making sure she was okay. Bernice wasn't my friend, but she could be, and friends wouldn't leave each other alone. Not in a place like this. even if the threat was all fake, especially because the threat was all fake. So back around the corner I went, straight into the arms of the skinned alive man who reached for me from an alcove in the wall. I didn't make eye contact with his lifeless wax eyes because he looked bloody and hideous, and I hated him. I moved on, walking faster, retracing my steps through the corridors, peering into the darkness at the shadowy figures that lurked there, trying not to see them if they weren't her. My heart pounded faster. My feet moved quicker. The screams, laughs, seemed to grow louder the further I went. I started to imagine that some of those screams might be hers, that some creature made of wax had somehow grabbed her. And then I was running, starting to panic, taking a corner too fast, yelping when I ran into monsters. "Watch it!" One of them, with stringy hair, shouted, putting an arm out to stop me. "You shouldn't be here, you little dweeb. Where's your mother?" It didn't take me long to realize they were just a couple of teenagers, a boy and a girl, both with long hair, holding hands. Still, I ducked under the outstretched arm and ran past them. I don't know why. I should have asked for help, or even asked if they'd seen her, but they were teenagers. They wouldn't have cared. Coming around the next corner, I saw two things that stopped me in my tracks. The first was the naked old man in the bathtub, with his black eyes and bath cap, stubbly beard, and thin, bony arm in the air, holding a long-handled scrubber. This one wasn't a monster, not any I'd ever heard of. But somehow, he scared me the most. I hadn't been able to look at him the first time around, had kept my eyes glued to the floor while Bernice giggled and peered into the bath. This time, I had to look, because the second thing I noticed was the tennis ball he was holding in his outstretched hand. "Bernice!" I hissed, gulping as I stepped towards the bathtub. "Are you there?" Screams, screeches, shrieks, and squawks from above. I moved closer, keeping my eyes on the tennis ball and not on the face of the man. He wasn't real. I knew that. He was made of wax. He couldn't hurt me. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't move. So why was the ball in his hand? And why was Bernice in the bath? It took me a second to understand what I was seeing. Bernice, lying face down on the smooth surface of wax that was meant to be water, from which the old man was rising up. Her short auburn hair fanned out around her head, skirt hitched up around her knees. "Bernice," I whispered again, doing everything I could not to cry. "Are you okay?" My legs bumped against the rim of the ceramic bathtub. I lifted one arm to reach out. My eyes flicked to the face of the waxwork, which was far too close, its horrible blank gaze boring into me. The red bulb above the bathtub flickered. My fingers touched the top of Bernice's head, something, arms, grabbed me from behind. And something, voices, screamed in my ears on both sides. I screamed, staggered back, stumbled, and fell to the floor. The flickering light bulb revealed two gangly forms, twisted shapes in the darkness, closing in around me, reached out their arms, making strange, slurping sounds that sounded like kisses. "Gotcha!" laughed one, and I knew straight away who it was. "Ha ha ha, you screamed like a little girl. Oh no, did you piss your pants? Oh, are you really scared? Do you want your mommy?" Bernice rose up in the bathtub, bumping the bulb and making it swing as her sisters danced around me, clutching their sides in laughter. The grin on her lips disappeared when she noticed the look on my face in the swinging light. "That was brilliant," laughed one of the girls, high-fiving the other above me. "Come on, Burr. Ma'am and Dad are waiting." And just like that, they were gone, racing away from the bathtub and the wax man and me on the floor and Bernice. And that's why I always avoided girls. I pushed myself up while Bernice climbed out of the tub and took back her ball. She had her back to me, and I had my eyes on the floor. She started to walk away, and I thought, good, go, leave me alone with your stupid straw hair and ugly freckles. But then she stopped in her tracks and looked back. "Sorry," she said, and I looked into a pair of darting eyes. It was my sister's idea. Kind of stupid, kind of. I thought it would be funny. A good prank. But it wasn't. She came closer. "It was nice you came after me. I wasn't sure you would." I blushed, looked at my feet. I just wanted her to go. The screams from the speakers were better company. The lifeless creations populating the labyrinth were less likely to hurt me. Then, "Are you coming?" She lifted her arm and held out her hand, and I blushed even more and looked up. "We came in together. You're not gonna let me walk out on my own, are ya? One of the monsters might get me." She smiled. A small smile, apologetic. She was being friendly for real, and I liked it. I mirrored her smile and felt a flutter in my chest, something strange that made a lump catch in my throat. I had to swallow hard to get rid of it. "At least you have those tennis balls to throw, if it does." "Yeah, they make great weapons. Not as good as lightsabers, but here." She handed the one she was holding to me and took the other one out of her pocket. I thought of Luke and Vader on the ground back at the restaurant and wondered if they'd still be there when I got back. Mom and Dad definitely wouldn't have seen them. Any other time, the fear of losing them would have stabbed arrows of dread into my heart and had me racing back in a panic. But I didn't seem too bothered by it now. When Bernice offered her hand again, I took it. And then we were walking back the way we'd come, through the monsters and the noise towards the exit, the wailing house of horrors. with its hallways full of scares, closed in around us. But as we walked hand in hand through the corridors, past eerie figures, and through screams that now seemed to be quieter, I wasn't really afraid anymore. With Bernice by my side, it was like we were off on an adventure, like the Goonies in their subterranean caves. And even if our caves did house monsters, I realized they weren't so scary, and neither were girls. One book, Wonder, New York City, 1955. Lonnie White pulled up his collar at a Fifth Avenue bookstore window against the cold. Black patches from lack of sleep lay under his eyes. Snowflakes, each an unkindly tiny angel to his mind, descended in the night. But it wasn't the crystals scurrying down his back that gave him the shudders, nor was it the ice melting in the hollow of his back. It was the overwhelming thought the snow crystals gathered together purposely of one mind, a sentient being. This is not possible, he told himself, but it feels all the same, like crystals of death prescient in their condemnation. He laughed at the poetic twist, coming out of his throat like a choking hack. The absurdity of his mind. The existence of hell is ridiculous. Well-dressed Manhattanites strolled by. Ankle-length dresses, pillbox hats, fedoras, and double-breasted suits. Lights flashed, and horns blared from hulking post-war automobiles, as if crying out to him alone, as if they knew him, were accusing him. Lost in thought, he stared, unblinking, at the best-selling novel on display, Scarlet Streets. A photo of the author, Julia Christensen, was poised on the back cover, a beautiful blonde. Her soft brown eyes radiated an undeniable sexual allure. If a passerby were to listen, which they never did, they might hear Lonnie mumbling at the window as they skirted around him. A bestseller, he would announce quietly, shaking his head ever so slowly. A bestseller. A young man, Lonnie was as plain could be. He wore jeans under a green military jacket, though he had never been in the service. Neither handsome nor ugly, he was a man no one noticed. And yet, he preferred it that way. A ghost to the world. Anyone who bothered to look closely could see he was deranged in his loneliness. But no one bothered to look at all, much less closely. His only unique quality was that he lived alone in a 30-room Washington Heights castle, north of Manhattan. The medieval structure was inherited when his parents died. The trust paid the taxes and bills, providing him a stipend to live on. He had no family, no need for a job, no need for friends. Occasionally, like now, he would visit what he thought of as his storefront and think back to Julia, his one and only lover. I loved her, he said to the glass. I truly did. I'm not a bad person. They had met randomly when they had shared a park bench the previous summer. He had guessed she was an actress, and she had responded with a shy smile as if he had guessed correctly. For some reason, he had mentioned Shakespeare was an actor and a writer. She, of course, had asked if he was a writer. He had admitted this was true, letting his ego lead the way, as men will do when impressing young women. But he felt he was not an authentic writer by any stretch. For this, he had to publish. He simply tapped away on his Smith Corona clipper within his castle tower, his garret, overlooking the Hudson River. Sweating, smoking endless, unfiltered Chesterfields, he pursued his great American novel from a place where his dire imaginings could flow. Julia's eyes had glowed a special, admiring look, and he let the inner warmth of another human being bath him. Much to his surprise, they struck a friendship which began with meeting for coffee in the village and eventually moved on to lovemaking in her apartment. One thing he knew for sure was to never, never bring her to his castle, for then she would know he had risen no higher in life than an unemployed trust fund recipient and was not a successful writer. This was wrong of him, he knew. But what could he do? This beautiful woman gave him the kind of attention he had never had. Is there any actual harm in letting her think better of me than you really are? Is it so bad to go out and embellish your wardrobe with fine suits to be the man you want to be? What if this is your only and last chance to feel a love and sexual embrace you had known only others to have? And so the deception went on, until Julia, as any curious woman would, wanted to see what Lonnie had written. The book he had been tinkering away at did exist in a high stack of typed-out white paper, cross-outs, and scribbles. Nobody had ever read it. The book was just the tapping on typewriter keys to burn his time. But as proof he was a writer, he gathered up the stacks of pages, 300 or more, and took them to Julia. He lay them before her as an offering, and so, as the days went on, he would sprawl on her apartment couch while she read through his novel, page by page, hour by hour. "Don't stare at me while I'm reading, silly," Julia would say, never offering her opinion. Each day, he returned panic-stricken to his castle, for his greatest hope, his desperate passion, was that Julia would like the novel. One word from her could save or crush any last vestiges of self-esteem remaining in his lonely life. He paced and paced into the night in his cavernous dining room, biting his nails. My God, what will she think of my novel? He thought. What if she doesn't like it, but she did like it? And more than just liking it, she had a friend who she thought could publish the work with the oldest publisher in New York, a specialist in suspense and murder. To Lonnie, this seemed beyond comprehension, beyond any imaginings of success he could think of or even dream. Yes, 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 he pleaded. Anything your friend can do, do. And so he released the pile of pages with Julia to take to her friend. In just 2 short weeks, Julia had word back from Bill. Could Lonnie meet her at her apartment? But it was only later, when she was across from Lonnie in a red leather booth, sipping her gin martini, fresh from their lovemaking, a pink glow glistening on her cheeks, that she said, "I have some news about your book." Lonnie was speechless. He stared, transfixed on her siren's face, her blonde hair cascading in Lonnie's imagination, just the hint of a rise and fall of her breasts under her white blouse. "The manuscript is accepted for publication," she said. This was beyond happiness for Lonnie to hear. The novel, and only from Julia's connections, would become a success. Life was truly grand. "But there is one thing," Julia said, her delicate nails holding a martini glass. "Bill says the marketing of the book is crucial. He won't back it unless we have the right, how did he put it? Image. That's it. The right image." Julia laid out the requirements. "The author needs to be a woman. Me, actually. You have to understand how important this is. Bill says books sell with sexy authors. And you, Lonnie, well, as much as I love you, do you want the book to be successful? It could make a lot of money." At first, Lonnie thought, "No way will I let my book go to a publishing house unless under my name." But then he also thought about what he would walk away from. Lonnie was simply a hobbyist writer. Sure, now that he knew a publisher was interested, he could send it out to multiple publishers and maybe find someone else. But with Julia as the author, he had something else. He had Julia. He had the last and only pleasure he would ever find in a woman. A woman who would likely be offended if he didn't do things her way. A woman who he didn't want to risk losing. It was decided. Julia Christensen would be the author. Lonnie, the ghostwriter. "Do you think it would be a good idea to send it out to other publishers?" Lonnie asked. Julia bristled, her eyes staring down. "Maybe, if you don't trust me." This, of course, settled it. The book came to market, and at first went nowhere, but slowly gained traction as a sleeper with a growing readership. A tragic murder mystery with a twist. Heart-rending, the New York Post book summaries said. And so, in 6 months, the book climbed into the bestsellers and became, by all appearances, a blockbuster. At least it was successful from Lonnie's view, reading the trades and watching Julia Christensen on the talk shows. The book is a hit, a tremendous hit. Julia said, after dragging her upper teeth against her lower lip. Lonnie stared, mesmerized. They were perched on Julia's new kitchen island. She had explained she needed a nicer apartment in case news people were to follow her home. Image, she explained, was everything. Lonnie fidgeted in his chair. It seems like we should get an advance or something. Julia flipped her right hand, as if swiping a bothersome mosquito. All the money went to marketing, dear. Lonnie took in the marble kitchen island, the lavish oriental rugs, the view of Manhattan. Hesitating like she had remembered something, Julia said, "You'll see. The truth is, I wouldn't even have taken this apartment if Bill hadn't insisted. I've never met Bill. Soon, honey, soon. You'll like him." Within a few months, Lonnie was leaving messages for Julia, and she wasn't calling back. What could be wrong? True, it might offend her, but he decided to stop by. How else could he see her, set things right? He knew she was busy, but this was only fair. A man Lonnie had never met answered the apartment door. "My good man, you must be Lonnie," he said. Lonnie could smell greasy hair tonic. The man was lanky, tall, and Lonnie had never seen a human being whose eyes smiled less. "Julia?" "Lonnie!" Wearing a white robe, loose enough for Lonnie to realize this was all she wore, Julia leaned through the doorway of the kitchen. "I would have called you. Finally, you meet Bill." "Bill? Introduce yourself." But Bill didn't have time, as Lonnie swept past him to Julia, who was poking cubes of raw steak and vegetables with a skewer, chopped potatoes, onions, a cucumber. Something rose up in Lonnie, an anger in his chest that grabbed his heart, prevented him from taking a breath as he choked down a venomous, dark taste. Julia could see the anguish in Lonnie's eyes, the naive awareness widening in a little boy's innocence. "What? You think I'd tie up with a loser? A one-book wonder. You've got nothing, Lonnie, not even your book. Now get lost." But we stole it, Lonnie. Your book, yes, but more than that, we stole your creative energy, your mind. It wasn't the words she said that ripped through Lonnie's mind. No. It was recognizing the flush on Julia's face that Lonnie so cherished that set him off, causing him to lose himself in an inner roar rising into the front of his brain. A blinding white, Lonnie grabbed the shish kebab skewer and held the back of Julia's head by grabbing her hair with his left hand. He plunged the steel point into Julia's right eye, then slowly thrust the length forward, his head slightly tilting in curiosity at the ease of the pointed steel scrunching through to the rear of her skull. She screamed and fell, with her hands gripping her face. Lonnie yanked out the skewer, and he was no longer slow or curious. He punched the steel again and again into her chest, blood splattering on her white robe. With each thrust, he felt the emptiness of his life, the never having the authentic love of even one woman. It was so ruthlessly unfair. He ignored Bill as he turned to leave. Bill, near catatonic, remained riveted on Julia's crumpled body. Within weeks, Lonnie picked up the New York Post. A sordid murder affair was splashed on the front page. Author Christensen, murder solved. Kennedy gets the chair. The story described a Mr. William Kennedy who pimped for this lady of the evening, Julia Christensen, until she hit it big with her book. The whore who wrote a bestseller, the article said. Just a pimp and his whore, it turned out. A common story on the streets of New York. Lonnie continued to live in his drafty Washington Heights monstrosity. Sure, he had committed a murder, he thought, but fully justified, pushed beyond his limit, and betrayed on so many levels. Who wouldn't? He often found himself on Fifth Avenue at the window of his bookstore as the winter diminished, spring ended, and summer began. In the window, scarlet streets taunted him. The book bragged to him how it was an even greater smash since the prostitute author was murdered. Lonnie paced his castle tower well into the night. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He now knew he had written a bestseller, but he couldn't claim it. He also had writer's block, but knew why. Julia had taken his creative mind and died with it, stolen it, as she had said. She had taken who he was somehow, his talent. But no worries. He knew how to get his creativity back. This only made sense. He grinned to himself. That's it? What greater power than talent? And I'll have plenty. The woman lying in front of Lonnie had published not one, but 4 novels. He had followed her down the dark streets of Brooklyn. And it wasn't difficult, with a little chloroform, to get her back to his castle. She was now tucked safely away within the basement crypt. His parents' bodies lay resting near her in the gray stones, their mouths aghast, eyes open. They lay in graves covered with a clear, glass-like resin. Tossing notepaper to the girl, he demanded she write. Later, he would take the notes to his garret tower and plink away on his Smith Corona. Plink, plink, plink. But this wasn't enough. Only by piercing his eyes into the depth of her creative mind, fusing his eyes with hers in an inexorable transformation, could the process work. He strapped her down on her back and lay prone against the top of her soft warmth compressed against him. He sensed her terror. "Don't blink," he begged, digging into her pupils with his own. "The windows are your soul," he pleaded. "I must meet you at exactly the right moment. The moment your eyes go dead. He tightened his hands ever so slowly on her throat, saving the moment, perfecting, staring. As the girl's eyes died, he could feel her talent moving to his own mind exquisitely. The tiny angels of a sentient being joined him, the ice crystals, the snow. Once completed, he could feel his creativity soaring. He couldn't wait to go to his garret, couldn't wait to join his Smith Corona. But first, some business. This was only Wout, a respect. He honored her with her own place and lay her carefully, lovingly, he felt, in an open grave, the row his parents lay in, covering her with clear resin. She formed a sanctuary of her own, her face aghast, mouth open, eyes seemingly aware. But even while doing so, he tried not to dwell on the acid in his stomach. The burst of talent she'd given him would play out. When the time came, he knew there was only one way to refill his creativity. The snow talked to him, beckoned him on. The crystal angels. Hello, Mary. Dear Mary, the doctors are asking me to write notes. Notes to people, to say thank you for things. And you are obviously my first choice. Thank you for teaching me how to fold origami. In every fold of the paper, I found immense comfort. I do it now that the doctor said I am stable. They forced some food down my throat and told me a bunch of lies. Now I fold origami and argue with doctors. Not a very interesting life. I wish they would let me talk to you. Aubrey. September 19th. Mary, the doctors are pushing for more notes. They say it will help me through past trauma or something. I tune them out when they talk sappy to me. But here I am, trying to get them off my back. Today, I would like to thank you for all the cookies I got when I escaped my house and came to yours. I have a very distinct memory of them. They had a hint of hazelnut in them, rich and fluffy, but they always left my brain fuzzy, making it hard to focus or really think much. Everything seemed so much easier after eating those cookies. I didn't feel a need to argue, to prove my point. I felt so much better. Normally, I wouldn't like to feel so impressionable, but it was strangely soothing then. Aubrey, September 22nd. Hello again. You wouldn't believe the fuss the doctors are making, Mary. They're quite upset I'm writing to you. Did you know they still believe the kidnapping story? I keep telling them you didn't have anything to do with my disappearance. Anyway, I've decided to continue this ritual of sending you letters. The doctors say I don't have to, but it's strangely liberating. So I think I'll thank you for the time we spent together. Everyone keeps saying that you were cruel, that you locked me up, but I distinctly remember you giving me a nice bed, food, and water. You talked to me, You understood my mind. When I woke up screaming, you wouldn't assume things. You didn't rush over and treat me like there was something wrong with me. You didn't tell me that it wasn't real or try to reassure me. You simply smiled at me. It was refreshing. When I told you about how beautiful fire was, when it stretched its long fingers, curling around a finger, nobody understood me like you did. So thank you for that, I guess. Aubrey. September 26th. Hi, Mary. I had a memory come back to me today. Do you remember the time that I snuck into your house? It was sometime in mid-winter. It was snowing, and I told you that I had never gotten to try hot chocolate, so you wanted to help me make it. You got out chocolate bars. You said that you had made it all by hand. I only remember that because I had asked why the chocolate tasted different. But that's beside the point. You gave me a knife. I was only 11 at the time, and I hadn't been given many opportunities with it, and I cut myself. This was when we had just started meeting. Instead of crying, I just looked at the blood. Then I asked why it did that, and why my finger stung. You just looked at me and told me that it was blood, and explained the human body. Nobody treated me as intelligent due to my many abnormal behaviors. So when you explained the human body and injuries, I was fascinated. I became obsessed with the concept of injury, and you helped explain it. So thank you for teaching me about that. Aubrey, October 2nd. Mary, the doctors keep telling me about my case. Keep telling me so many reasons why I should not be thankful I met you, should not write notes to you. But I don't understand why. They weren't there. They didn't understand everything that happened. They don't understand why you kept me hidden, why you took me away from the world. They keep telling me that being away from reality for so long messed with my memories and my head. They keep telling me, I know it's hard to process, and your brain is making sense of fear in a way that is easier to handle. What happened wasn't like what you remember. You were kidnapped, Aubrey. And Mary wasn't a nice lady. And I keep telling them, no, 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 no. You don't understand. She was a nice lady, a very nice lady. She taught me lots of things. She was nice, nicer than lots of people. And they keep telling me, no, 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 no. And I can't stand it. They keep using words I don't like. They used the word abuse, torture. If it wasn't for you, I would have lost my temper already. So today, I would like to thank you for teaching me patience. When you kept me away from everyone, you taught me lots of things. You taught me to be patient, for one thing. And even though I wasn't always the most comfortable, I'm better off now. I can sit in a quiet room for hours without doing anything. I can wait and wait without ever getting impatient. Although the doctors are saying that my comfortableness in isolation is not patience, it is a response to trauma. But I know they're wrong, so thank you for teaching me patience. Aubrey, October 6th. Hello, I'm getting tired of these people telling me things about you, Mary. They want me to stop writing to you, and I'm getting frustrated. They told me that you were mean, that you hurt me. But you never hurt me that bad. You were just trying to teach me. I asked you to teach me. That's what it was. It was always that. They keep telling me lies, so many lies. And I'm starting to have nightmares. They tell me horrible things. They say that you tied me to a bed frame because you were mean. And I keep telling them to stop lying because I'm getting nightmares and fake memories. I had one specific nightmare that I remember. I was bleeding badly, and you kept saying the same thing. You spilled a drop, and you said it meanly, but I can't remember that. When I woke up, I thought I did, but it can't be real. Because you were nice. I'm positive. And the doctors won't listen. And it's all so frustrating. Because they told me that you were cruel. And now I have nightmares. I read about my case online. What they're saying you did to me is awful. I got nightmares. They're incredibly vivid. Now, before I lost all my sanity, I took up an old hobby, knitting. This is another thing you taught me to do. Even though my mother is claiming to be the one who has taught me, I know it was you. I'm not allowed to keep anything I knit. And I can't knit unless somebody in a room watches me. They think I am going to try to kill myself. Not that I can blame them. I have violent tendencies. They also say that I have masochism. They say I enjoy pain. It's not something I considered before. I was always fascinated by the idea of it. I was never afraid of experiencing it. But regardless, knitting has been wonderful. Thank you for teaching me to knit. It's one of the only things that I enjoy. That and origami, of course. Anyway, I probably won't get to write to you much more. I barely manage to write these notes. It won't be long before the pity wears off, and I can't cry my way into a new piece of paper. Aubrey, October 8th. Mary, 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 Mary. I like your name. M-A-R-Y. Something soothing about it. I'm sure that this will be the last letter I write to you. And not because I can't get more paper. The doctors have decided that I cannot be trusted. Even though some of them say that I'm remembering. I'm not. It's just fake memories. Nightmares induced by the horror stories they told me. The lies, 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 lies. So many lies. They think I've gone crazy. They didn't say that exactly. They think it's from trauma. Trauma. They use that word so much. They are moving me to a psychiatric ward. I've been in a normal hospital. They were monitoring my health. Now, they've decided that I am dangerous to myself or others. In their defense, I have become worse at hiding myself. I lash out easier, but it's oddly liberating to be able to lash out, to get angry, to let the little voice in the back of my head, the one that wants chaos, the one that wants to watch the effect of pain on someone's face. You taught me that. You showed me how happy you were when you let the little voice in your head have more influence. They don't think it's the voice in my head. They think it's the trauma and the 12 years that I spent missing. The, as they say, damage Mary inflicted caused it. So, that's what I have to thank you for today. Thank you for showing me that it's okay to be crazy sometimes. Other people's screams will stop. But mostly, thank you for giving me an excuse. The girl who was raised better, the one who has no reason to hurt people, gets more disgusted looks than me. Little me got in trouble when I hurt others. But the psychotic, traumatized